Next on 9 News, the Supreme Court says Donald Trump will be staying on Colorado's ballot.
It's a blowout.
We'll hear from the Colorado woman behind the lawsuit about today's landmark decision.
Broncos country, say goodbye to Russ. The team is officially moving on from its multi-million-dollar quarterback.
Disturbing cases involving funeral homes in Colorado keep piling up. Now lawmakers want to take action. There's a new bill that could finally regulate the industry. 4 o'clock at 9 News starts now. 4 o'clock on the first Monday in March, and it is a busy Monday. Plenty to cover. We're going to start with the U.S. Supreme Court. They made it official today, unanimously saying that former President Trump does remain eligible to run for office.
The nation's highest court, in a 9-0 decision, reversed the Colorado Supreme Court decision that declared Trump ineligible based on the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment. 9 News political reporter Marshall Zellinger is here. You've been following this from the get-go, Marshall. The case ended up being Trump versus Anderson. The namesake, Norma Anderson, is not surprised by the decision.
Norma Anderson, the former Republican state lawmaker, knew after the Supreme Court hearing earlier this month in Washington, D.C., that she would not win her challenge to keep Trump off the primary ballot, though her legal team saw several silver linings in the 9-0 decision against them. The attorneys for Anderson and the 5 other Colorado voters who challenged Trump's eligibility told me today that winning was only part of their goal. They said they wanted people to know the 14th Amendment exists and has power and force. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that someone who has previously taken the oath to defend the Constitution cannot hold office if they are an insurrectionist. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that individual states cannot determine that for federal offices. In the 9-0 decision, the court wrote, "We conclude that states may disqualify persons holding or attempting to hold state office, but states have no power under the Constitution to enforce Section 3 with respect to federal offices, especially the presidency." When I talked with the attorneys, I asked how they see silver linings in a ruling that feels like Super Bowl 24 when the Denver Broncos were blown out by the 49ers 55-10.
We did lose, but unlike the Broncos analogy, what happened here was that Donald Trump asked the court to do several things, any one of which would have resulted in a victory for him. They only did the narrowest, most procedural one. So I would analyze this more, not as a 55-10 defeat, but as a game that was decided by the refs.
According to Anderson's lawyers, they got the attention on the 14th Amendment that can be used for decades. However, the decision also said that Congress needs to pass legislation for Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to be used, meaning minus a bill from Congress saying they dictate the insurrection clause or a court can dictate the insurrection clause, it kind of can't be used right now.
You're talking about the blowout, the 9-0 decision today, and there's a reason there aren't many 9-0 decisions. Cases that are clearly one way or the other don't often make it to the court, or the court won't even take them.
Sure, and you're going to hear from a constitutional law attorney in a little bit, Jessica Smith. I talked with her earlier today for a story that I'm going to air on next about the idea, did the Colorado State Supreme Court really screw this up somehow? And she told me, no, they were protecting Colorado law and the Colorado election law that says you can challenge someone's eligibility in court and that it's the Secretary of State that can deem someone ineligible based on factors that were decided in Colorado, but that the Supreme Court has a different purview of making sure it works federally.
Well, if nothing else, you brought back that special Sunday in New Orleans, that 55-10 game.
No.
Thanks for that, Marshall.
And Norma, though, I think is really proud of her efforts and what she's done.
She still says today that she defended democracy and would continue to do so. She said in the few years she has left, that part left me a little uncomfortable, but at 91, she's got a long life still to go, has no regrets about doing this. Again, not surprised by the decision, but a little concerned, she said, about the extended part of the decision that made it beyond the states don't have control of this.
Certainly much more about this to come over the next day or so. We'll be turning to you for more on that, and we will be talking with Jessica Smith in a couple minutes. Thank you very much, Marshall.
The Supreme Court's decision comes one day before Colorado's primary election. Ballots can still be dropped off in ballot boxes or at polling centers. The deadline for those to be counted is 7 p.m. tomorrow, Super Tuesday. We'll have complete coverage of how Colorado votes in tomorrow's primary on air and online.
Well, just as inevitable as traffic on I-25, Broncos country saw this happen today. Russell Wilson no longer will be a Denver Bronco. The team announcing today they plan to release him at the start of the new league year, which hits next week. This was Russell's statement posted on social media. Part of it says, quote, "Our family grew here. We made countless memories and friendships and formed relationships that will last a lifetime." And he said to my teammates, "Thank you for going to battle together and being there through it all." Russell Wilson ended his tweet today with, "I am excited for what's next." Again, it was simply a matter of when and not if, as far as those who watch the team closely.
Now, we just want to know what day before what? The 17th? Is that it? Or March? The Broncos front office has been really coy in the past about what they would do with Russell Wilson and his mega contract, but they made it official today. Scotty Gaines is joining us now with the end of the Russell Wilson era. It had so much promise.
It did.
Initially, I mean, this town was like, woo!
Where were you on March 16th, 2022? The day they announced the Russell Wilson trade.
Everyone was excited.
Everybody was excited. The Broncos traded away all of their assets to get him. They signed him to a $245 million contract not long after. And in 2 seasons, they received just 11 wins. He's no longer the Broncos quarterback. Our 9 News Broncos insider Mike Kliss joins us now live. You know, Mike, all the talk at the Combine last week, the NFL Combine, was Sean Payton seemed to have moved on. He was already talking about his next quarterback. It's well known Sean and Russ were not best friends, but how much do you think that goes into Russ not returning? Because statistically, he had a fine year this past season.
Yes, I think it has everything to do with it. I mean, a lot of people are saying it's a contract why they're releasing him, but they're eating $39 million. They're paying him $39 million this year. And if a team decides to pay $39 million to a player to go away, that means the coach didn't like that quarterback for whatever reason. And I agree, Scotty. Russell Wilson seemed to have a fine year statistically, 26 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. He was 6th among quarterbacks who played full time. He had some fourth quarter magic in him, but he just didn't have the precision, the processing, the timing, getting players straight. There were times when receivers were supposed to go in motion and Russ didn't get him in motion, and that messed up the play. There were little things like that, some intangibles that it didn't mix with Sean Payton. And Sean Payton's in charge of this organization now. No longer George Payton, who made the trade, but Sean Payton is making really the ultimate decisions. He went to the Combine to try to fall in love with the quarterback. I think you'll see the Broncos with the free agent quarterback next week, and they interviewed 8 of the top quarterbacks that are going to be draft eligible in April, and so they're going to draft one of those guys too, I would think. So they're going to have 2 guys. They're going to start over, new start for the Broncos, and Russell Wilson, regardless of where he goes, he's going to get $39 million from the Broncos.
Yet again, Bronco fans are going to have an offseason of who's going to be our quarterback next year. We'll have a lot of time to dive into that. So, Mike, they gave up 5 picks, 3 players, gave Russ $245 million in the process of all this. Would you say this is the worst move in Broncos franchise history?
It's the worst move in Broncos franchise history. There's some debate on where it ranks in NFL history. I don't think it's up there with the Herschel Walker trade, because in that trade, the Dallas Cowboys went from 1-15 to winning 3 of the 4 Super Bowls. So Seattle still has to turn around their program and become Super Bowl champions as a result of the Wilson trade for it to be the worst. But from the Broncos' perspective, it didn't help. When you give up all those draft picks, never mind the players, and they were quality players, but what really hurt were all those draft picks. The Broncos went all in on Russell Wilson in 2022, and at the time it was applauded. It was applauded here in the 9 News, 4 o'clock newscast, I'm pretty sure. And it just, for whatever reason, George Payton first hired Nathaniel Hackett, as you know, it was to lure in Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay. That didn't work out. Russ was plan B. Everyone was excited about plan B. Then Sean Payton came in, and he wasn't committed to Russell Wilson, the way the rest of the organization was. And so they move on, they start over. Maybe they can stay on the same page and have the GM, the head coach, the owner, and the quarterback, where everybody's invested in the same people, those top 4 pillars of an organization. They all have to be combined as one. The Broncos haven't had that in 7 or 8 years. And that's what they need going forward if they're going to dig out of this hole that they've been in, really since Super Bowl 50. in the 2015 season.
There's a reason they haven't made the playoffs in 8 seasons. Mike, thanks so much. We'll talk to you at 5 o'clock. Mike mentioned $39 million that Russ will get this season. At the end of that statement, he says he's excited for what's next. I don't blame him.
Me too.
$39 million. He'll get to go to a new
He was
city.
going to get it either way. So when Mike says is the worst move in Broncos history, and might be the worst in NFL history, but where does it stand in world history? Is it one of
It's top 20
It's
for
in
sure.
the top 20.
Yeah.
Well,
it's in the AP top 25 poll, I'd say.
Well, when they went all in on Peyton Manning with a little bit of uncertainty, it worked.
Yeah, I think
So
a lot of
people
fans
were hoping.
saw Elway, Manning, Wilson, and it just didn't turn out that way for them.
We'll see what happens with Russell. We'll see what happens with the Broncos. A lot to talk about, Scotty. We'll see you coming up with more at 5 o'clock.
Let's take a live look right now at the Eisenhower Tunnel. Things settling down a little in the mountains after a full weekend of snow. Boy, they got a lot of snow. Many areas getting between 1 and 2 feet of fresh powder. They
Also,
like it,
yeah.
but it was all at once.
Plenty of wind, too. It was at times pretty uncomfortable for people, especially the travelers, Lauren.
That's right, and that's why we had so many winter weather alerts for the high country, because even areas that weren't seeing a ton of snowfall, we're seeing those very gusty winds, and that can even whip up snow that's on the ground and cause those whiteout conditions, reduced visibility, hazardous travel. So it was really tough out on the roadways of the high country this weekend. Some areas getting quite a bit of snow, as we just mentioned. Green Mountain Reservoir reported 19.5 inches of snow. Ridgeway reported 17 inches, just under 17 inches in Cameron Pass, 16 inches reported in Winter Park. 14.3 in Glendevi and Spicer. Breckenridge reporting 14 inches, 13.3 in Silverthorne, 13 inches in Loveland Pass. Copper Mountain also got 13 inches. Mount Crested Butte reported a foot of snow. So we are still seeing snow falling in some of those high country areas. As we take a look at our HD Doppler radar, you can see the snow still falling across central and northern portions of the high country, even managing to push out a few raindrops and snowflakes across far northern portions of the Front Range and Eastern Plains. But because of these lingering snow showers, we do still have winter weather advisories in effect until midnight. And we also have avalanche warnings that are now in place through maybe the next hour or so. But you want to continue to stay out of those backcountry areas, I'd say, for the rest of the afternoon, maybe even into tomorrow, as this could get extended. So I'll have details on that lingering mountain snow, the clearing that's happening across the Front Range and Eastern Plains, and when Denver could see some next snowfall. All of that just ahead.
Thank you very much, Lauren. The horrors at several funeral homes across our state is now starting to prompt action. State lawmakers introducing a bill today that would require licensing for funeral workers, and it would be the first time they'd be held to specific standards since the industry was deregulated in the state 41 years ago. Our 9 News consumer investigator, Steve Stager, asked family members who've been directly impacted by bad funeral practices if the bill goes far enough.
In October of 2019, our daughter passed away. She was 38 years old.
Sheila Canfield-Jones wanted the best for her daughter, but instead she got the worst.
We were told at that time that the ashes we had were cement, that they were not hers, and her body had been identified as one of the bodies in the Penrose building decaying for the last 4 years. Sorry. It's still hard, no matter how I talk about it.
She's pushing through to be here at the state capitol
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
on an important day.
We are here today to declare that enough is enough in Colorado.
State lawmakers look to do something that hasn't been done since 1983, require licensure for funeral workers.
We're the only state in America that doesn't require a licensure, and that's also why almost all the horrific stories that we've heard around the nation come out of Colorado.
Horrific stories like what happened to Sheila's daughter in Penrose or Danielle's husband in Montrose.
It's a great first step. Coming out of Sunset Mesa.
The bill requires a license to be a funeral director, embalmer, or cremationist. To get that license, you have to graduate with a degree in the profession, have an apprenticeship in the field at some point, pass a criminal background check, and pass a national exam. Anyone already practicing in the state could qualify for a provisional license, bypassing the need for a degree if they can show that they've done the job for 6,500 hours and fulfill all the rest.
It's ensuring that victims also have protection.
I think it's a step in the right direction to keep criminals out of Colorado.
Both Danielle and Sheila say licenses alone won't make the changes necessary, and they want to see more.
I'd like to see some continuing education. I think it needs to have some ethics and morals. I'm in the financial industry. I still have to go through anti-money laundering every single year.
More, so another family doesn't have to go through their pain.
Because she deserves better. You know, everyone deserves dignity in death. and she didn't have that opportunity.
The new licensing rules wouldn't start until 2026 if this bill is passed, but funeral directors currently operating in the state would have to get a provisional license before then. I asked the state if they'll have the resources to enforce these licenses. They say they will have those resources, and we should know how much that will cost soon when they attach a financial note to this bill as it moves its way through the legislature, Tom.
Steve, it's hard to imagine people being opposed to this, except for probably the people thinking it'll cost more.
The funeral industry, but you got to think about it. Basically, every other state in the country has some sort of regulation in place. This gets Colorado up to the same level as other states in the country. You imagine there will be a bit of pushback from people in the industry, but a lot of these powerful stories might push their way through.
There have been too many of them. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
A man who was shocked with a taser multiple times by sheriff's deputies in Los Animas County has reached a $1.5 million settlement in his federal lawsuit. Attorneys for Kenneth Espinoza announced the settlement today. Espinoza's son was pulled over in November of 2022 for a traffic stop while his father was driving behind. When Espinoza pulled off on the road behind his son, deputies told him to leave. After initially refusing, he started to drive away when the deputies ordered him to stay. He was then handcuffed, taken to the patrol car, and stunned with a taser. Both deputies were fired in August of 2023 after an investigation found their use of tasers was unjustified.
Just this afternoon, Denver police are saying a man accused of stealing pieces from the MLK Jr. monument in City Park has now turned himself in. They're saying Robert Duran was one of two people who stole 3 pieces of bronze from the statue last month. Investigators later found the pieces at a scrap shop. They say they don't believe it to have been a hate crime. Police are still looking for Herman Duran, the other suspect in this case. If you have any information, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers.